The house was silent, but my heart was not. It beat like a drum, louder than the ticking clock on the wall, louder than the wind scratching against the windows. Something inside me already knew that life was about to change, though I could not say why. I still remember that night. The night when fear and confusion tied themselves around me like a rope. My husband was lying on the hospital bed, his face pale, his lips dry. Machines beeped around him, but his eyes were on me. He gripped my hand with the last strength he had, and in that moment, I felt something I had never felt before. A strange weight in the air, heavy with secrets. He whispered, "Promise me. Don't go to the other house. No matter what happens, never go inside." His voice was so weak, but the words cut into me like a knife. Another house. That same house I had seen only once from a distance, hidden away behind old trees, far from town. I never asked him why it was there. He never explained. All he said, many times over the years, was that it wasn't my place. That it was forbidden. I thought it was odd, but I trusted him. Until that night. The way his eyes locked onto mine, almost desperate, almost pleading, made me shiver. Why was it so important to him? Why in his last moments would he not speak of love or family or peace, but of a locked house I was never allowed to enter? His hand trembled and I held it tightly, afraid to let go. "Please," he said again, weaker now. "Don't." Open the door, and then silence. The long, unbroken silence that comes when a soul leaves the body. The machines screamed with their endless beeps, but I heard nothing except the hollow sound in my chest. My husband was gone. I sat there for hours, numb, staring at his face, still expecting him to breathe again. But my mind replayed his last words over and over. "Don't open the door." That night I returned to our home alone. The house felt too big, too cold. Every creak in the floorboards made me look over my shoulder. I poured myself a glass of water, but even the sound of the water in the glass felt too loud, too sharp. My hands were shaking, and then I saw it. On the kitchen table was an envelope. My name was written on it in his handwriting. My heart stopped. I didn't remember seeing it there before I left for the hospital. Had he left it for me? Or had someone else placed it there? I don't know. But I opened it with trembling fingers. Inside were 2 keys. Old, rusted, heavy. One was small, the kind that might open a trunk or a drawer. The other was long, old-fashioned, like the kind used for ancient doors. Beneath the keys was a note. Only 4 words. "The house is yours." My breath caught in my throat. My husband had spent years telling me not to go near that house. He had banned me from it, swore it was not for me. And now, after his death, he left me the keys? I felt dizzy, my knees weak, like the floor was slipping away. Why would he do this? Why leave me with a house full of secrets he swore I must never enter? I sat at the table, the keys heavy in my palm. The silence of the house seemed to close in on me, pressing against my chest. My mind spun with questions I couldn't answer. What was inside that hidden house? Why had he been so afraid of me going there? And why, in his very last breath, had he reminded me again? Not to open the door? I could barely sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the house in my mind. Dark windows staring back at me. The locked door waiting like a mouth that should never be opened. But another thought wouldn't leave me alone. If he didn't want me to enter, why give me the keys? Why leave me with this burden, this puzzle? The sound of the wind outside grew louder, almost like whispers against the walls. I pulled the blanket tighter around me, but it wasn't enough. My heart raced. Something inside me was telling me that his story was not over. His death was not the end. It was the beginning. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, clutching those 2 keys in my hand until my fingers hurt. By dawn, I made a decision. I would go to that house. I didn't know what I would find. I didn't know if it would break me or save me. But I knew one thing for certain. The truth was waiting for me behind that forbidden door. And no matter the cost, I had to open it. The morning after my husband's death felt unreal, like I had stepped into a world I did not recognize. The sunlight crept through the curtains, but it did not warm me. The house was too quiet, too still, as if it were holding its breath. I had buried my face in the pillow for hours, refusing to move. But the keys lay on the table where I had left them, glinting in the light, almost calling to me. My eyes kept returning to them, heavy, rusted, waiting. I told myself I should be grieving, not chasing shadows. But grief and curiosity fought inside me, twisting together until I could no longer separate one from the other. And then I heard his voice again in my memory. His whisper. "Promise me, don't go to the other house." Why would he say that? And then leave me the keys? Why give me the very thing that could unlock what he spent his life hiding? I couldn't ignore it anymore. By noon, I put on my coat, slipped the keys into my pocket, and walked out the door. The air outside was cold, and every step on the gravel road echoed in my ears. The hidden house was not far, maybe a 15-minute walk from our home, tucked behind an overgrown path that twisted through tall trees. I had seen it once years ago, when my husband drove past quickly and told me not to look. I remembered the roof sagging under years of rain, the dark windows clouded with dust, and the ivy crawling across the walls like veins. It was a place that looked forgotten, abandoned. But now, with the keys burning in my pocket, it felt alive. The closer I came, the heavier my steps felt. My heart pounded, and sweat gathered in my palms despite the cold air. The trees whispered above me as the wind slid through their branches. And then I saw it. The house stood at the end of the path, half hidden by shadows, its wooden frame cracked and weary with age. The paint was peeling, the windows dull. A broken shutter banged softly against the wall, making a hollow sound in the silence. But what stopped me was the door. It was tall, made of dark wood, stronger than the rest of the house. And in the center, shining faintly despite years of dirt, was a brass keyhole. I stood there, frozen. The smaller key in my pocket pressed against my thigh, but it was the larger, heavy one that mattered. My husband had carried it for years. I had seen it once hanging from his chain, and when I asked what it was for, he told me never to ask again. Now it was mine. I pulled it out slowly, my hand trembling. The cold metal bit into my skin. My breath came in shallow gasps, and I felt the ground tilt beneath me. "Don't open the door," he had said, but I was standing here now, and I couldn't turn back. I slid the key into the lock. It fit perfectly. For a moment, I didn't move. I just stood there holding my breath, listening. The world around me grew still. Even the wind seemed to pause. I twisted the key. The lock turned with a slow, heavy click that echoed through the air like thunder. I pulled at the handle, but the door didn't move at first. It was swollen with age, stiff from years of being closed. I pushed harder, my shoulder against the wood, and finally it groaned open. A breath of air escaped from inside, cold, stale, and heavy with dust. It smelled of damp wood, forgotten things, and something else I couldn't name. I stepped across the threshold. The floor creaked under my weight, and a shiver ran through me. The light from the doorway stretched into the room, showing broken furniture, cobwebs, and sheets of dust floating in the air. It looked like no one had lived here for decades, but I knew better. There was a presence in the room, though I could not see it. The silence was too deep, too unnatural, like the house itself was holding back a secret. I whispered to myself, "What were you hiding from me?" I took another step, my shoes leaving marks in the dust. The floorboards groaned, and something upstairs answered with a faint creak. My breath caught. I froze. Was it the house settling? Or was someone here? The shadows in the corners seemed to grow darker, stretching like arms. I rubbed my hands against my coat, trying to fight the chill. Then I saw it. In the center of the room was a wooden table, covered with a thick gray sheet. On top of it sat a box, small, iron-bound, locked with a keyhole. My eyes widened. My fingers reached for the smaller key in my pocket. Could it be for this? I pulled it out, heart racing, and held it above the lock. But before I could try, a loud knock echoed against the front door behind me. I jumped, my heart slamming in my chest. I turned, staring at the door I had just forced open. Who would come here? No one even knew this house belonged to us. The knock came again, louder this time. My legs trembled. My breath quickened. I whispered, "Who's there?" There was no answer. Only silence, and then a third knock. Long, slow, heavy, shaking the wood so hard I felt it through the floor. I dropped the key, and it clattered to the ground, the sound piercing the silence. I wasn't alone. The shadow beneath the door stayed still. I stood frozen in the middle of the room, my hand hovering over the dropped key, my breath locked in my throat. For a moment, I thought my heart would stop. Whoever was outside, they knew I was here. The silence stretched. No more knocking, no words, just the soft sound of the wind outside brushing against the broken shutter. I waited, my ears straining for the smallest noise. Then slowly, the shadow moved away. I couldn't breathe until the light beneath the door was clear again. My knees felt weak, but I forced myself to bend down and grab the key. My fingers shook so hard I nearly dropped it again. I whispered to myself, "It's just my mind. Just my fear." But even as I said it, I didn't believe it. I turned back toward the table and the small iron-bound box. But something caught my eye before I reached it. A staircase. It stood at the far end of the room, leading upward into the darkness. The wooden steps looked fragile, groaning with age, each one coated in dust. But it wasn't the sight of it that made my skin crawl. It was the sound, a creak, soft but real. One of those steps had just been pressed down by something. I froze, my eyes locked on the staircase, my body stiff as stone. "Hello?" My voice cracked as it left my throat, breaking the silence. No answer. The air grew heavier, pressing on my chest. The dust swirled in the faint shaft of light coming through the doorway, as if stirred by a breath that wasn't mine. I gripped the small key tighter in my fist and forced myself to take one step closer to the staircase. My foot pressed down on the creaky floor, and the sound echoed like a warning. That's when I smelled it. A faint scent, sharp and bitter, like cigarette smoke. My husband never smoked. He hated it. But this smell was fresh, as if someone had just been here, standing where I now stood. My stomach turned. My mind screamed at me to run, but my legs wouldn't move. I took another step forward, my eyes still locked on the dark staircase. And then, something upstairs moved. It was not the creak of wood this time. It was a shuffle, like the sound of a foot dragging across the floor. I gasped and stumbled back, nearly tripping over the table. My hand slammed against the box and it rattled under my touch. I spun around, desperate to leave, but the open doorway behind me looked like a trap. If someone was inside, what if they were waiting for me to run? My pulse hammered in my ears. I had to think. I had to decide, and then I saw it. At the corner of the room, half hidden by shadows, was another trunk. Larger than the box on the table, it sat low to the ground, its wood cracked and blackened with age. A heavy iron lock sealed it shut. But what caught my eye was the mark scratched into its surface. It was a symbol I didn't understand, a rough carving of a circle with a line slashed through it. My hands shook as I crouched beside it. Dust puffed up into the air, stinging my nose. I ran my fingers across the carving, feeling the grooves. Whoever had marked it had done so with force, with anger. My throat tightened. My husband had always been so calm, so careful. I couldn't imagine him making such a violent mark. I reached for the smaller key again. Could this be what it was meant for? But before I could try it, the sound upstairs came again. This time, it was louder, a slow, dragging step, moving closer to the top of the staircase. I jerked my head toward the stairs, my chest rising and falling too fast. My mouth was dry, my body trembling. Someone was here. The house was not empty. I scrambled backward, bumping into the table again. The box on top slid an inch, scraping against the wood, the sound painfully sharp in the silence. I pressed my back against the wall, clutching the key in my hand like a weapon, though I knew it could do nothing. My eyes locked on the staircase, waiting for whatever was coming down. But nothing came. The sound stopped. The silence grew heavy once more, wrapping itself around me like a shroud. I didn't know if I should be relieved or terrified. I slid along the wall until I reached the trunk again. My breath came in shallow gasps, but I forced the small key into the lock. It turned. The click was loud, too loud, and I flinched as if I had just woken something that had been sleeping. I pulled the lock free and lifted the lid. Inside were papers, yellowed with age, and a bundle of photographs tied together with string. Beneath them, wrapped in cloth, was something heavy. I reached in and pulled the bundle free. The cloth fell away, revealing a stack of letters, each sealed with wax. My name was on the top one. I didn't have time to open it, because just then, the staircase groaned again. A shadow stretched across the ceiling, long and thin, cast by something standing at the top of the stairs. The voice froze me in place. "You shouldn't be here." It was low, almost a whisper, but it was real. My heart hammered against my ribs so hard I thought it would break them. I lifted my eyes toward the staircase, but the shadow was gone. The silence returned, heavy and suffocating. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run, but my legs felt like stone. For a moment, I just stood there, clutching the letter in my hand until my knuckles turned white. Then I forced myself to look back at the trunk. The lid was still open, the papers and photographs scattered inside. The wax-sealed letters stacked neatly as if waiting for me. My fingers trembled as I pulled out the top letter, the one with my name written on it in his handwriting, my husband's handwriting. The sight of it sent a chill through me. He had written to me, from this place, from the house he swore I must never enter. I slipped the wax seal open, my breath shaking, and unfolded the paper. The first line made my stomach twist. "If you are reading this, I am gone." My eyes blurred with tears, but I forced myself to keep reading. "There are things I could never tell you while I was alive, things that would have destroyed everything we built. I tried to protect you from it, but I know curiosity burns. Please, if you love me, stop now. Do not go further. The more you uncover, the more danger you will bring to yourself." My hand shook so hard I nearly dropped the letter. Stop now? How could I stop? He had left me the keys. He had left me this letter. He must have known I would not turn away. I shoved the letter back into the trunk, too afraid to finish reading it. Instead, I grabbed the bundle of photographs, my fingers slipping on the string as I pulled it free. The photos were old, yellowed at the edges, black and white. My breath caught as I flipped through them. My husband was in them. Younger, thinner, but it was him. In some photos, he stood with strangers I didn't recognize. Men in suits. Women with cold eyes. In one picture, he was standing in front of this very house, his hand on the door, looking over his shoulder as if someone was watching. But then I reached the last photo, and my blood ran cold. It was me. Younger, smiling, standing in a park I knew well. But I had no memory of that picture being taken. He wasn't in the photo. I was alone. My stomach twisted as I stared at it. Who had taken this picture of me? And why was it here, hidden in this house, long before we ever met? I dropped the photos back into the trunk, my hands shaking so badly they slipped from my grasp and scattered across the dusty floor. That's when I heard it. A knock at the front door. I gasped and spun around, my chest tight. The sound was sharp, urgent. Another knock. Louder this time. I stood frozen, the blood rushing in my ears, and then a voice, muffled but clear. "Are you in there?" I didn't answer. My mouth was too dry, my tongue heavy. The voice came again, harsher now. "I know you're in there. Open the door." Panic surged through me. Who was it? How did they know I was here? I crept to the front of the room, my footsteps slow, quiet. The door loomed before me, the brass keyhole glinting faintly in the dim light. I pressed my ear against the wood. The voice was closer now. "You shouldn't have come. He told you not to." My breath caught. My knees almost buckled. Whoever was outside knew about my husband's warning. I stepped back, my hand trembling as I clutched the key still in my pocket. The knock came again. So loud it rattled the wood. I screamed, "Who are you?" Silence. The seconds dragged by, each one heavier than the last. My body shook from head to toe. Finally, I forced myself to pull the door open. But when I did, no one was there. The path outside was empty, the trees whispering in the cold wind. The shadows stretched long across the ground, but there was no figure, no footprints, no sign of anyone. I stepped out, my eyes darting across the path. Nothing, only silence. Then, from the corner of my vision, I caught movement. A man stood at the edge of the trees, half hidden in shadow. His face was pale, his clothes dark, and his eyes fixed on me. He raised one finger to his lips, a silent warning, and then he turned and vanished into the woods. I could not move. The man's face haunted me even after he disappeared into the trees. Pale, cold, eyes that seemed to know me, though I had never seen him before. I stumbled back into the house, slamming the door shut, my chest heaving with every breath. My hands shook so badly I could barely lock it again. Who was he? Why did he look at me like that? And how did he know about my husband's warning? I leaned against the door, pressing my forehead to the cold wood, trying to calm myself. The letter, the photographs, the shadow on the stairs. And now this stranger, it was too much. I gathered the photos from the floor, stuffing them back into the trunk, though my fingers trembled so hard they bent some of the edges. My mind screamed at me to leave everything here, to run and never return. But another part of me, stubborn, desperate, refused to let go. I shoved the letter into my coat pocket and left the house, locking the heavy door behind me. My legs carried me quickly back down the path, though I kept glancing over my shoulder, certain I would see that man following me. When I reached home, the sun was already low, bleeding orange and red across the horizon. The shadows of the trees stretched long and dark, crawling across the road like fingers. That evening, as I sat at the table staring at the keys, there was a knock on my door. I jumped so hard the glass in my hand nearly slipped. My heart raced as I rose slowly and crept to the front door. This time, I forced myself to open it quickly before fear could stop me. A man stood there, older with tired eyes, gray hair, and a weathered face. He looked like he had worked under the sun his whole life. "Evening," he said, his voice rough. I swallowed hard. "Do I know you?" He shifted uneasily, glancing around as if to check if anyone was watching. Then he leaned closer and whispered, "You shouldn't have gone to that house." My blood ran cold. My lips parted, but no words came out. He nodded slowly, his expression heavy, almost sad. "I told him not to bring you into this. I warned him, but he never listened. You knew my husband?" My voice was thin, shaky. The man sighed. "We were neighbors once. That house, it was not just his. It belonged to others before him, men who carried secrets. Dangerous secrets." I stared at him, my chest tight. "What kind of secrets?" He shook his head sharply. "It's not for you to know. You're safer not knowing." His eyes softened. "Please leave it. Lock the door, throw away the keys, and never go back." Anger surged through my fear. How can I do that? He left it to me. He left me the keys. He wanted me to find something. The man's face darkened. Or maybe he wanted to protect you even after death. Did you ever think of that? I opened my mouth to answer, but he stepped back, shaking his head. "Forget what you saw. Forget what you heard. If you don't..." His voice broke off. He glanced around again, then whispered, "They'll come for you." Before I could stop him, he turned and walked away, disappearing into the fading light. I stood in the doorway, trembling, the cold air biting at my skin. His words echoed inside me. "They'll come for you." I shut the door, locked it, and pressed my back against it, my legs weak. Who were they? And what did my husband have to do with them? That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint creaks and sighs of the house. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the pale man in the woods, the neighbor's sad eyes, and my husband's desperate whisper. The keys lay on the table beside me, heavy, waiting. By midnight, I couldn't stand it anymore. I rose from bed, pulled on my coat, and took the keys in my hand. My feet carried me back to the hidden house almost without thought, as if something inside me demanded it. The forest was black around me, the wind sharp and cold. My footsteps crunched on the gravel, too loud in the silence. I kept looking back, certain I would see someone following. When I reached the house, it stood in the shadows like a watchful giant. The broken shutter banged softly, a hollow sound that seemed to echo in my bones. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The air was heavy, colder than outside, thick with dust. The trunk sat where I had left it. The papers and photographs waited inside. The staircase loomed in the dark. I closed the door behind me, my hands trembling. The silence pressed in again, and then a footstep, soft, upstairs. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. My eyes darted to the staircase, another step, slow, dragging. My body went rigid. The sound was too clear, too real. Someone was here. I pressed my back against the wall, clutching the key like a weapon. My pulse hammered so loud I thought it would give me away. The steps moved again. Across the upstairs floor, then silence. I swallowed hard, trying to calm my shaking hands. "Who's there?" My voice broke, weak and small in the heavy air. No answer. I waited, every second stretching into eternity. The silence was worse than the sound, and then faintly from upstairs came the sound of breathing. Long, slow, not mine. The word "leave" echoed through the house like a curse. My knees buckled, and I pressed myself tighter against the wall, my heart thundering so loud I was sure whoever was upstairs could hear it. Silence followed. I waited, frozen, every muscle aching with fear. The air was so thick and stale it felt like I was drowning in it. I wanted to run, to throw open the door and escape into the night. But I couldn't move. Then, slowly, I realized something. The smell. It wasn't just dust and damp wood. It was sharp, bitter. Cigarette smoke, fresh. My stomach dropped. My husband never smoked. He hated it. He said once that smoke meant decay, weakness, slow death. And yet here it was, curling faintly in the air, stinging my throat. Someone else had been here. Maybe they still were. I forced myself to take a step toward the staircase, my body trembling, my breath shallow. My hand slid along the cracked wall as if it could keep me upright. The steps above creaked again. Not steady footsteps this time, but a shuffle. A pause. A drag of weight across the old wood. I whispered, "Who's there?" My voice was barely more than a breath. No answer. The silence pressed down heavier than before, and I felt the air shift, as if the house itself was holding its breath. I couldn't do it. I couldn't go up there. My body screamed at me to stop. So, instead, I turned back to the trunk, my hands shaking as I pulled out more of the papers. Among them, beneath the bundle of photographs, I found a book. Small, leather-bound, worn at the edges. A diary. I opened it carefully, the pages yellow and fragile. The first entry was written in my husband's handwriting. "The house is not safe. They watch me. They follow me. I cannot let her know." My chest tightened. My hands trembled as I turned the page. "I hear them at night. Breathing. Sometimes I smell the smoke. It is not mine. I lock the door, but still they come." I felt my stomach twist. The words were like a mirror of what I was living now. Another entry. She asked me again about the keys. I lied. I hate lying, but the truth would destroy her. Tears blurred my eyes. I pressed my hand to my mouth to keep from sobbing out loud. My husband had been protecting me. But from what? From who? I turned more pages. The handwriting grew more frantic, the ink darker, heavier, smudged as if written in shaking hands. If they find it, everything ends. I must hide it better. Even she cannot know. Especially she cannot know. My hands shook so hard I almost dropped the diary. Hide what? Before I could turn another page, a floorboard groaned upstairs. Louder this time. I slammed the diary shut, my chest heaving. My eyes darted to the staircase, and then I saw it. At the top of the stairs, half hidden by the shadows, A figure. Still. Watching. I couldn't see a face, only a dark outline against the black. My throat closed. My hands went cold. The figure didn't move. Didn't speak. I stumbled backward, my foot knocking against the table. The iron-bound box rattled loudly, the sound echoing through the house. The figure shifted slowly, one step forward. The wood groaned beneath its weight. I gasped, my breath tearing from my chest. Without thinking, I grabbed the diary and shoved it into my coat pocket. My hand fumbled for the smaller key, and I jammed it into the lock of the iron box. The key turned with a click. Inside was another bundle of papers, but on top of them sat a lighter. Old, scratched, with a faint smell of smoke. It wasn't his. The figure at the stairs moved again, one step closer. I snatched the lighter, holding it in my trembling hand like it might protect me. My other hand clutched the diary tight. My breath came fast, uneven, and then from the top of the stairs, the figure whispered, low and broken, "You don't belong here." The figure at the top of the stairs was gone, but the smell of smoke lingered, sharp and bitter, curling through the air like a warning. My heart thudded against my ribs, and my breath came in shallow gasps. I gripped the diary tighter, my palms slick with sweat. I wanted to leave. Every nerve in my body screamed for me to run, but another voice inside me whispered louder, "You need to know the truth." I pulled the diary from my coat pocket and flipped back to where I had left off. The fragile pages crinkled in my trembling hands, the words swimming before my eyes in the dim light. They are getting closer. I hear them outside the house. Sometimes I think they are inside already. I don't know how long I can keep this hidden. I told her never to come here. If she does, it will be the end. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. Who were they? And what was he hiding? I turned the page. The thing I must protect. It is not mine, but it is in my care now. If they find it, everything we know will be destroyed. I cannot tell her. I cannot tell anyone. The burden is mine alone. I frowned, my hands tightening on the book. The thing I must protect. The words repeated in my mind like a drumbeat. What was he talking about? I flipped through more pages, each entry more frantic than the last. His neat handwriting grew messy, slanted, almost wild. Ink smudged, words crossed out, sentences unfinished. I don't sleep anymore. I hear whispers in the walls. I smell the smoke when I wake. I think they are already inside. I think they watch me while I write this. I think they know about her. I shivered, the cold crawling down my spine. My fingers brushed the edges of the pages, leaving faint marks in the dust that clung to them. The last few entries were short, desperate scrawls. I can't do this much longer. If you're reading this, forgive me. It wasn't supposed to end this way, and then, nothing. Blank pages stretched on after that, their emptiness heavier than words. I closed the diary slowly, pressing it against my chest, my tears blurring my vision. My husband, the man I thought I knew, had been living in fear, hiding secrets so heavy they crushed him. But what was he hiding? And why did someone else seem to still be here? I wiped my eyes, forcing myself to breathe. I slipped the diary back into my coat pocket and turned to the iron box again. The lighter lay on the floor where I had dropped it, glinting faintly in the dim light. The whisper froze my blood. "You found it." It was his voice, my husband's. I knew it as well as I knew my own heartbeat. Low, gentle, the same voice that once whispered to me in the quiet of night. But now it came from nowhere, and everywhere. I spun around, my eyes searching the room, but it was empty. The shadows stretched long across the floor, unmoving. My chest heaved as I pressed my back against the wall, clutching the diary to my chest. "No," I whispered. "No, you're gone. You're not here." But the silence that followed felt like an answer. I backed toward the center of the room, my trembling legs brushing against the trunk. My eyes darted across the walls, desperate to find something, anything that would make sense. And then I saw it, the rug. It lay in the corner, half curled at the edges, thick with dust. But beneath the frayed fabric, I could see faint lines. Straight lines. Edges that didn't match the rest of the floor. I dropped to my knees, my breath sharp, and pulled the rug aside. Dust rose in a choking cloud, stinging my nose and eyes. Beneath it was a trap door. The wood was old, blackened, the iron ring rusted. My stomach twisted as I stared at it. The air around it felt different, colder, heavier, carrying a faint smell I couldn't place. Metallic, sour, and rotten all at once. My hands shook as I touched the iron ring. It was icy, almost painful. I pulled, and the trapdoor groaned open, the hinges screaming like they hadn't moved in years. A wave of cold air surged up from the darkness below, carrying with it a smell that made my stomach lurch. Damp earth, mold, and something else, something sharp and bitter that burned my throat. I leaned over the opening, peering down. The light from above barely reached the bottom, but I could make out stone walls, rough and uneven, and a narrow staircase descending into the dark. My heart pounded. Every instinct told me to close the door, cover it, and run. But my curiosity was stronger. I grabbed the lighter from the iron box, flicking it on with trembling fingers. The small flame wavered, weak against the shadows, but it was all I had. I stepped onto the first stair. The wood groaned under my weight, sending echoes down into the dark. My breath came in sharp gasps and sweat dampened my palms despite the cold. 1 step, 2 steps. The air grew colder with every breath, thick with the scent of damp stone. My skin prickled, goosebumps rising along my arms. By the time I reached the bottom, the flame in the lighter flickered weakly, casting long shadows against the walls. The basement stretched before me. Small, cramped, carved roughly from the earth itself. The stone walls dripped with moisture, the sound of water echoing softly in the silence. And in the center of the room was a chair, wooden, old, its surface stained dark. I swallowed hard, the sound loud in my ears. My steps were slow, hesitant as I moved closer. On the floor around the chair were marks, deep scratches in the stone, like someone had kicked or clawed at it in desperation. My chest tightened. My breath shook. I lifted the lighter higher, its glow trembling across the room. That's when I saw it. On the far wall, faint and smeared, was writing. Letters scrawled in what looked like charcoal, or something darker. I stepped closer, my legs weak, my heart racing. The words became clear. Don't trust anyone. My stomach dropped. The same words from the photograph. I staggered back, nearly dropping the lighter. The flame flickered wildly, shadows dancing across the damp stone walls. And then, a sound, a whisper not from above. From here, from the darkness deeper in the basement. You shouldn't be here. My knees buckled. I swung the lighter toward the sound, but the flame revealed nothing but shadows. My chest heaved as my pulse roared in my ears. Then came another sound, soft, slow, dragging across the stone floor. Footsteps. Not mine. I stumbled backward, the lighter shaking in my hand, casting frantic shadows. My back hit the cold wall, and I pressed against it, my body trembling. Who's there? My voice cracked, weak, nearly lost in the silence. The footsteps stopped. The air grew heavier, thicker, pressing against my lungs. And then, I felt it, warm breath against my ear. The darkness swallowed me whole. The lighter clattered across the stone floor, the tiny flame sputtering out, leaving me in silence and blackness so complete I couldn't even see my own hands. My breath came too fast, too loud, echoing against the damp walls. Then the whisper came again. It's already too late. I spun in the dark, pressing my back against the wall, my palms scraping the cold stone. My heart thundered and my throat tightened until I could barely breathe. Who are you? My voice cracked, weak, swallowed by the silence. No answer. Only the sound of water dripping somewhere in the distance. I closed my eyes, though it made no difference. The blackness was already complete. My hands fumbled along the wall, searching blindly, my fingertips raw against the damp stone. I needed the lighter. I needed light, anything. My foot hit something hard. I crouched quickly, my hand sweeping across the floor. My fingers brushed against the lighter, slick with moisture. I grabbed it, my hands trembling, and flicked it desperately. A small flame sputtered to life. The shadows jumped back, stretching long and sharp across the walls. My chest heaved as the light revealed the basement again. The chair, the scratches, the words scrawled on the wall, and something else. In the far corner, half hidden in the shadows, sat a small wooden shelf. Dust and cobwebs clung to it, but the faint glint of metal caught my eye. I stumbled toward it, my knees weak, my hands shaking so badly the lighter nearly slipped from my grip. On the shelf were several old cassette tapes, their plastic cases yellowed and cracked with age. Beside them, a small tape recorder, covered in dust. I froze, my throat tight. My husband's diary had mentioned voices, whispers, secrets. Could these tapes hold them? I reached out, my hand trembling as I picked up the first tape. The label was smeared, the ink faded, but I could just make out the words scratched onto it. Truth. My heart lurched. I shoved the tape into the recorder and pressed play. At first, only static. Harsh grating, filling the silence. I almost tore it out, but then, a voice. Low. Tired. Familiar. My husband. If you're listening to this, then I failed. My knees gave out and I dropped to the floor, clutching the recorder. Tears stung my eyes, blurring the weak flame of the lighter. His voice continued. Ragged. Broken. I tried to protect you. I tried to keep it from reaching you. But if you're hearing this, it's already too late. My stomach twisted. My breath caught in my throat. I wanted to scream, to throw the recorder across the room, but I couldn't move. The tape hissed, then crackled again as he spoke. They will come for the house, for what is inside. You must not trust them, not the neighbors, not the faces you think you know, not even your own memory. They twist it. They change it. They make you doubt yourself. That is how they win. I pressed the recorder to my chest, sobbing silently, my tears dripping onto the plastic. His voice grew weaker. If you love me, you will stop now. Leave this place. Burn what you found. Don't go deeper, please. The tape cut off in a burst of static. I sat frozen, my body trembling, my breath tearing in and out of my lungs. My hands shook as I pulled the tape free, shoving it back onto the shelf. I reached for another. The label on this one was darker, the ink smudged but still legible. Her. My blood ran cold. My hands shook as I shoved it into the recorder and pressed play. The static hissed again. Then his voice, softer this time. I see her face in the photographs. Younger, smiling. I don't know if she remembers. I don't know if she ever knew. But they have always been watching her. Long before me, long before us, my stomach lurched. My throat closed. He was talking about me. The tape clicked, the sound of the recorder grinding to silence. I ripped it out with shaking hands, my heart racing so fast it hurt. I shoved the recorder back onto the shelf, my breath ragged, my vision swimming with tears. I couldn't take more. I couldn't, but then I noticed another tape. Different from the rest. Its case was cracked, the label torn, but one word was still clear. Basement. My chest tightened. My hand hovered over it, trembling. I didn't want to know. I couldn't bear to. But some force inside me pushed me to pick it up. I slid it into the recorder, my breath catching, my heart hammering. I pressed play, at first only static again. Then his voice, but this time, it was a whisper. If you hear this, it's too late. The whisper in the dark froze me where I sat. She hears us now. It hadn't come from the recorder. I knew that deep in my bones. It had come from the far corner of the basement, where the shadows pressed thickest against the stone walls. My throat closed. My lungs burned. I could barely breathe. I flicked the lighter with trembling hands, desperate for its small flame. The spark caught, throwing a shaky glow into the darkness. The corner was empty, but the whisper still clung to the air. My heart pounded as I bent to pick up the recorder from the floor. My fingers slipped on its cracked plastic, slick with my own sweat. I shoved the last tape back onto the shelf and stared at the others, their faded labels calling to me. I knew I should stop. Every part of me screamed to run. But another part, a deeper, heavier part, needed to know. I grabbed a tape marked only with a number. 3. The recorder clicked as I slid it in and pressed play. Static hissed. Then his voice filled the basement again. Day 3. They've already been here. I hear them moving when the sun goes down. Cigarettes. Always the smell of cigarettes. I leave the house, and when I come back, things are moved. I know I'm not alone. My hands shook as I clutched the recorder closer. His voice was raw, broken, like a man crumbling under a weight too heavy to carry. The tape crackled. If she ever finds this? God, if she's hearing this now. I'm sorry. I lied. I had to. It was the only way to keep her safe. But the truth is bigger than us. Bigger than this town. Bigger than life itself. My lips parted, but no sound came. Tears blurred my eyes. His words dug into me like knives. The tape hissed again, then continued. They told me once it was a curse. Others said it was a gift. But I know what it really is. It's a trap. And if she uncovers it, they'll never let her go. The recording ended with a sharp click, the sound echoing through the basement. I dropped the tape, my chest heaving. My husband had carried this secret all his life. And now I was standing in the middle of it, the weight pressing down on me. I shoved the tape back onto the shelf, my hands trembling. My eyes landed on another one, the label almost gone, but one word faintly visible. Confession. My breath hitched. My stomach twisted. I shouldn't press play, I knew it. But my fingers moved on their own, sliding the tape into the recorder. The static was loud this time, grating and harsh. But then his voice came through, soft, almost whispering. If this is found, then you know everything has failed. I thought I could keep her away from it. I thought I could keep her safe. But I see now that was impossible. She was always meant to find it. They were always watching her. My skin crawled. My breath came sharp and shallow. Always watching me. His voice cracked, breaking. I wasn't your first. I won't be your last. I was only a wall, a shield. But shields break. And now, so will you. The tape ended in static. I tore it from the recorder, my hands shaking so badly the plastic case cracked in my grip. My stomach lurched as bile rose in my throat. I dropped the tape back onto the shelf, my vision swimming. I couldn't do this anymore. I couldn't. I staggered to my feet, clutching the lighter in one hand and the diary in the other. My legs barely carried me to the stairs. I needed to get out. I needed air. But as I placed my foot on the first step, I heard it. A sound that didn't belong to me. Not whispers. Not footsteps in the basement, a thud. From upstairs. I froze. My heart slamming against my ribs, then another thud. Louder, a crack of wood splintering. The front door. Someone was breaking in. My breath caught, and I dropped to my knees, the lighter flickering in my trembling hand. I pressed myself against the stairs, listening as the noise grew louder. The door above groaned, the wood straining under heavy blows. Then, crack. The sound split through the silence. The door had given way. My chest heaved as I pressed my hand to my mouth, muffling my gasps. My eyes darted to the basement ceiling, where faint shadows moved across the cracks in the wood. Heavy footsteps entered the house above. Slow, measured, searching. I clutched the diary tighter, my nails digging into its worn leather cover. My whole body shook with silent sobs, my tears dripping onto the stone floor. Whoever it was, they were inside now, and they were looking for something. The footsteps stopped directly above me. I pressed my hand over my mouth, my breath loud and ragged in my ears. The diary trembled in my grip, and the lighter flickered weakly, threatening to die out. Dust rained down from the ceiling as the boards creaked under the intruder's weight. Whoever it was, they stood right on top of the trapdoor, as if they knew exactly where I was. For a long moment, nothing happened. The silence stretched, broken only by the faint drip of water against stone. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. Then the footsteps moved again. Slow, heavy, pacing across the room above. The intruder's boots scraped against the wood, circling the space. The sound was deliberate, controlled, as if they weren't searching randomly. They were hunting. I crouched lower, pulling the diary against my chest like it could protect me. The shadows pressed in, and the smell of smoke grew stronger, drifting down through the cracks in the floorboards. He was smoking. The bitter scent clawed at my throat, burning my lungs. I pressed my sleeve against my face to block it, but it didn't help. Then his voice broke the silence. Low, rough, close. Where is it? The sound vibrated through the wood, straight into my bones. I clamped my hand tighter over my mouth, tears streaming down my face. My body shook so badly I thought I would collapse. The intruder spoke again, louder this time. Where is it? The words echoed down into the basement, bouncing off the damp stone walls. I could hear the edge of anger in his tone, but also fear. My mind raced. What was he looking for? The thing my husband had written about in his diary? The thing he said he had to protect? The footsteps moved again, closer to the trap door. I dropped flat to the ground, pressing myself against the cold floor, praying he wouldn't open it. My fingers dug into the stone until they ached. Then came the sound I dreaded, a scrape, the iron ring of the trapdoor shifting. I bit down on my sleeve to keep from screaming. My eyes widened, my heart slamming against my ribs. The wood creaked as he tugged at it, but then he stopped. The footsteps moved away. I lay still, barely daring to breathe. The boards groaned under his weight as he crossed the room again. Then silence. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. I couldn't tell. The air was too heavy, my fear too sharp, and then a crash. Glass shattered above me, sharp and violent. I flinched, covering my head with my arms. The sound echoed through the house, followed by more crashes, furniture toppling, wood splintering, drawers ripped open. He was searching. Tearing the house apart. The voice came again, furious now. Where is it? The words thundered down, filled with rage. My stomach twisted, my chest tight. I pressed myself deeper into the shadows of the basement, my body trembling. I couldn't stay here. If he opened the trapdoor, I would be trapped with nowhere to run. My eyes darted across the basement, desperate. And that's when I saw it. At the far wall, half hidden behind the chair, a narrow gap in the stone. I crawled toward it, my hands scraping against the cold floor. My lighter flickered, casting just enough light to reveal the opening. It was small, barely wide enough for me to squeeze through, but it led somewhere. A tunnel carved into the earth. The footsteps above grew louder again, pacing across the room. My breath caught as dust fell from the ceiling. I shoved the diary into my coat and pressed myself into the gap. The stone tore at my coat, scraped my arms, but I forced myself through, inch by inch. The darkness swallowed me deeper, the smell of damp earth choking me. Behind me, the trapdoor groaned. I froze, my body wedged in the tunnel. My breath stopped in my throat. The intruder was pulling at it again. The sound of wood straining. Iron squealing filled the air, then silence, and whisper soft, terrifying. I know you're down there. The slam of the trapdoor echoed through the basement like a gunshot. I froze in the narrow tunnel. My body pressed against cold, damp stone. My chest heaved, my breath shallow and sharp. The sound of his whisper clung to me like a poison. I know you're down there. I stayed still for what felt like forever, too afraid to move. My arms ached from the rough stone, and my knees throbbed from crouching. The silence above stretched on, heavy and endless. Finally, when my lungs screamed for air, I slid backward out of the tunnel and crouched again in the basement. My lighter flickered weakly, casting trembling shadows across the walls. The house above was silent. Too silent. I didn't know if he was still there, watching, waiting. But something inside me told me I had little time. I had to find answers, fast. I stumbled back to the trunk, my legs trembling. I tore through the scattered papers, photographs, and letters. desperate for something, anything, that could explain what was happening. That's when I felt it, a thin envelope wedged beneath the false bottom of the trunk. My fingers scraped against the edge until I pried it loose. It was sealed, the wax cracked with age. My name was written across it in his handwriting. My breath caught and tears stung my eyes. With shaking hands, I ripped it open. The letter inside was long, the ink faded but still legible. My husband's words reached out to me like ghostly hands, each one pulling me deeper. My love, if you are reading this, then the life I built for us has already collapsed. I swore I would never bring this darkness to you, but I failed. They will come for the house, and if you have entered it, they will come for you too. I pressed my hand over my mouth, stifling a sob. The truth is simple, yet it will feel like madness. The house was not mine first. I inherited it along with its burden. For years, I pretended it was only an old property, a forgotten place. But inside, it lies something powerful, something dangerous, something they cannot be allowed to have. I never asked for it, but it became mine to guard. My hands shook so violently the paper rattled. I lied to you. I lied every time I said I was traveling for work. I lied every time I said I had meetings. I was here, in this house, watching, waiting, making sure it was never found. The neighbors know pieces of the truth, but not all. Some are with them. Some are against them. You cannot trust anyone, I gasped, my tears spilling onto the page, blurring the ink. Please forgive me. Please believe me. Every secret, every lie, every locked door. It was all for you. I was never protecting the house. I was protecting you. The letter ended there. No signature. No more words. I clutched the paper to my chest, my sobs silent, my body trembling. He had been protecting me all along, but from what? From who? The silence above broke suddenly. A floorboard groaned. I froze, my tears drying instantly, my heart lurching into my throat. Another groan. Heavy footsteps crossing the room above. He was still here? I stuffed the envelope into my coat, shoved the diary beside it, and pressed myself against the cold stone wall. My breath came in shallow gasps, and my ears strained for every sound. The footsteps moved slowly, deliberately, as if he knew I could hear them. Then his voice came again. Low and sharp. Give it to me. My throat tightened. My body shook. I clutched the lighter, though I knew it was useless. The footsteps circled the room above, pausing, then moving again. Dust fell through the cracks in the ceiling, landing softly on my coat. Do you hear me? His voice thundered now, furious. Give it to me! I pressed my hand over my mouth to stifle my sobs. My tears ran hot down my face. The footsteps stopped. Silence. And then, the trapdoor groaned. The iron ring scraped against the wood. He was opening it. The trapdoor creaked open. A line of light cut through the basement, spilling across the stone floor. My body froze, my breath caught in my throat. I pressed myself against the wall, clutching the diary and the letter tight to my chest. The hinges groaned louder as the door opened wider. Dust fell like rain, and the smell of smoke poured down the steps, thick and bitter. Boots appeared at the top, heavy, black. I bit down hard on my lip to stop myself from crying out. My body shook so violently I thought I would collapse. But then, suddenly, the door slammed shut again. The sound thundered through the basement, and I nearly screamed. I stumbled backward, my chest heaving, tears blurring my vision. Above me, silence. Why had he closed it? Why hadn't he come down? The question burned in my mind, but I didn't wait for an answer. I ran to the far wall, to the narrow tunnel I had seen earlier. My hands scraped against the stone as I pushed deeper, my shoulders aching, my breath tearing in and out of my lungs. The tunnel twisted and turned, the air colder, the stone walls closing in tight. Finally, it opened into a small hollow, a hidden chamber carved into the earth. I flicked the lighter again. Its weak flame flickered, revealing a rough wooden table pressed against the wall. On top of it was a small metal safe, rusted, its door sealed tight with a combination lock. My stomach twisted. My husband's diary had spoken of hiding it. Could this be what he meant? I stepped closer, my hands trembling. The safe was old but sturdy. The lock was scratched, worn from years of use. I reached out, my fingers brushing the cold metal, and then I saw it, taped to the top of the safe. A small scrap of paper, on it, written in his handwriting, were 3 numbers. I swallowed hard, my chest tight. My fingers shook as I turned the lock. One click, another, then the last. The safe creaked open. Inside were stacks of papers, yellowed and brittle. I pulled them out, my breath catching as I saw the seals stamped across the top. Official seals. Government seals. Documents I had never imagined he would have. I spread them across the table, my eyes darting over the words. They spoke of surveillance, operations, lists of names, dates, and codes. My husband had been part of something far larger than I had ever known. And then I saw it, a folder buried beneath the papers. Thin, marked with a single word. Candidates. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a list, names typed neatly in rows. Some were crossed out in red ink, others circled. Notes scrawled in the margins, my eyes skimmed the list. Strange names. Foreign names. Some familiar, some not. My heart pounded as I turned the page, and then I saw it, my name, circled, my breath stopped. The room spun around me. My knees gave out, and I clutched the edge of the table to keep from falling. Why? Why was my name here? What did it mean? My husband had been protecting me, but protecting me from what? From them? From myself? Tears streamed down my face as I pressed the folder against my chest, my heart breaking all over again. And then, the sound came again. Footsteps, above, heavy, slow. He was still here. I shoved the papers back into the safe, my hands trembling too hard to close it properly. The metal door clanged softly, echoing through the small chamber. The footsteps stopped. Silence. Then his voice drifted down again, low and sharp. I know what you found. My blood turned to ice. My body froze in place. His words came again, louder now, filled with rage. Give it to me! The walls seemed to close in, the air too heavy to breathe. My hands clutched the folder tighter, my name burning in my mind. He knew. He knew I had seen it. The trapdoor groaned open again. This time, I knew he wasn't going to stop. Light spilled into the basement, cutting through the shadows, stretching across the stone floor until it reached my feet. My breath caught in my throat, and I pressed myself against the far wall of the small chamber, clutching the folder to my chest. Boots thudded on the wooden steps. Slow, heavy, each one closer than the last. My tears blurred my vision, and my body shook so badly I thought I would collapse before he reached me. My husband's words from the tapes echoed in my head. Don't trust anyone. Not even the faces you think you know? The boots stopped at the bottom. The intruder stepped into the basement. He was taller than I expected. His shoulders broad, his coat long and dark. Smoke curled from the cigarette clutched between his fingers, the bitter smell choking the air. His face was pale, sharp, his eyes cold. He looked at me. And he smiled. Ah, he said softly, his voice low, cutting. You found it. I shook my head, pressing myself tighter against the wall. I don't know what you're talking about. His smile widened, but it was empty, cruel. The safe. The folder. The list. You opened it, didn't you? My throat closed. My lips trembled, but no words came. He stepped closer, the smoke trailing around him like a shadow. It doesn't matter. You can't change what you are. What I am? My voice cracked, barely a whisper. He tilted his head, his eyes glinting. Your husband thought he could keep it from you. Thought he could keep you from yourself. But it was always going to end like this. I shook my head violently, tears streaming down my face. No, he loved me. He was protecting me. The intruder laughed softly, shaking his head. Protecting you? He was protecting the world from you. The word struck me like a knife. My knees buckled and I clutched the folder tighter. "You're lying!" He crouched low, bringing his face close to mine. His breath was hot, heavy with smoke. His eyes bore into mine, unblinking. "Look at the list. Look at the names crossed out. Do you think they're alive? Do you think any of them escaped?" My hands trembled as I opened the folder again. The list stared back at me, endless rows of names. Some crossed out in red ink. Some circled. My name, still circled, burned into my vision. "What does it mean?" I whispered, my voice breaking. The intruder leaned closer, his smile gone now, his voice a low hiss. "It means you were chosen, just like the others. And now, it's your turn," I sobbed, shaking my head, the folder slipping from my grasp, scattering papers across the damp floor. No, it can't be true," his eyes narrowed. "You can deny it all you want, but the truth is already inside you. That's why your husband feared you would find this place. That's why he forbade you from entering. Because once you did, it would awaken." My body shook so hard I could barely stand. My husband's words came back to me in a flood. His warnings, his desperate whispers, his final plea. "Don't open the door," and I had. The intruder reached out, his hand grabbing my wrist, his grip like iron. "Come with me. You belong to us now," I screamed, jerking away, my nails tearing at his skin. The lighter slipped from my hand, clattering to the floor, its small flame sputtering. The basement filled with shadows as the flame flickered out. In the dark, I felt his hand grab me again, his breath hot against my ear. "You can't run from what you are!" I thrashed, kicking, clawing, my sobs tearing through the silence. My hand struck something sharp, the metal edge of the safe. My fingers closed around it and I swung blindly. A cry tore from his throat as he stumbled back. The sound of his cigarette hissing against damp stone filled the air. I scrambled to my feet, my hands bleeding, my chest heaving. I grabbed the diary, the letter, the folder, clutching them tight as I stumbled toward the tunnel. Behind me, his voice rose again, furious now. "This isn't over. You're already theirs." His words echoed after me as I crawled into the tunnel, the darkness pressing in from all sides. My lungs burned, my arms ached, but I kept moving, dragging myself forward until finally I saw a faint light ahead. I burst out into the cold night air, gasping, my tears freezing on my cheeks. The forest loomed dark and endless around me, the wind cutting sharp against my skin. I ran. I didn't stop until the hidden house was far behind me, its windows dark, its secrets sealed once more in the shadows. If you've stayed with me through this story, thank you. If you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support means everything, and it helps me bring you more stories full of mystery, suspense, and secrets waiting to be told.